Hello, hello, and good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the Autoimmune Matrix. You are in the right place, even though that doesn't say that on the screen. I am Dr. Ray Benedetto, and I'm here with my wife, Dr. Alison Benedetto. She will be on shortly. We want to welcome you to this latest edition of our monthly webinar series. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. At the bottom of your screen, you should see somewhere where you can, there's a Q&A section where you can ask a question or you can raise your hand. If everyone can hear me, if I could just have someone, I want to make sure that I'm not speaking into the vortex here. So if someone can hear me, if everyone can, there we go, raise the hand. Perfect, thank you. Excellent, then we will just dive right in. So at any point during the, again, just some housekeeping, at any point during the presentation, if somebody has a question, you can go ahead and submit those questions on the bottom of your screen there at those various pop-ups, by raising your hand or at the Q&A. And we will have a Q&A section towards the end. We have a lot to go through this evening in regards to autoimmunity and autoimmune disease. So we have a ton of material to blow through. So if you have questions, you can submit them during the presentation and we'll get to them at the end, or you can write them down and submit them at the end. That'll be fine. But we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So if you have questions along the way, just please submit them as we go. Again, welcome everyone. This is the Autoimmune Matrix. We are going to be talking about everything autoimmune this evening. For those of you who do not know me and my wife, Dr. Allison, you can see us on the screen there. We are chiropractors and functional medicine, functional nutrition doctors in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. You can see myself there and Dr. Allison and our beautiful 3 children who keep us quite busy when we're not in practice. We practice in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and we see a ton of patients who have autoimmune problems. So it's probably 50–75% of our practice, to be honest with you. So we speak from experience. You're going to hear my voice a lot tonight. You're going to hear her voice probably more than my voice. And but we're going to go ahead and dive right in and talk about autoimmune disease. Now, just real quick, before we go ahead and start talking about what causes autoimmune disease and how you can prevent it, manage it, treat it, let's real quick talk about what autoimmune disease is for those who do not know. Autoimmune disease is when your immune system attacks your own body. There are many named autoimmune diseases out there. You've no doubt heard of many of them. The more common ones are things like RA or rheumatoid arthritis, which affects your joints. MS or multiple sclerosis, which affects your brain and your central nervous system. The most common ones, which are ones that we see in our office most every day, are ones that affect the thyroid. So there are 2 different ones, one that causes hypothyroidism, which is Hashimoto's, and one that causes hyperthyroidism or overactive thyroid, which is Graves' disease. Lupus, psoriatic arthritis, you've heard of many of these. I'm sure you probably know somebody who's had these. Inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, things like that. So we're going to be talking kind of about autoimmune disease in general because there are a lot of commonalities as far as underlying causes. The way that to be honest with you, the way we diagnose them is which part of you is affected or which part of you is attacked, right? So if it's your joints, it's RA. If it's your, colon, it's ulcerative colitis. If it's your thyroid, it's Hashimoto's. So we're going to kind of we're going to start at the 50,000-foot view here and talk about how you get autoimmune disease, what causes it, and then the things, more importantly, that you can do to prevent it and or manage it. The first thing we want to touch on, something that we call the triangle of health. So we kind of want you to imagine your body and your health as a triangle. And at the base of that triangle are your genetics, your genes, right? Everybody thinks, well, I'm doomed to my genes. If I got genes, then that's, you know, if I got genes for an autoimmune disease, that's what I'm going to get. And that's not really necessarily the case. Obviously, we inherit our genes from our parents, and, you know, they are what they are. But they're all not, you know, just because you have genes for certain conditions or bad things, let's say, it doesn't mean that they're going to be expressed. There are other influences that need to turn our genes on or off. And you can see the three of them listed right there, which are environmental stressors or environmental exposure, chemical exposure, physical issues, and mental issues or psychological influences. So your environmental influences are things like your diet and environmental toxins and things like that. Physical influences are things like trauma and lack of exercise. Mental influences are things like behaviorals and emotional traumas and self-image and things like that. So we're going to make some more sense of these and discuss these as we go along in this presentation. Here's the matrix right here, right? So our genes are present. We know that, right? We all have them. But it's these other three influences through your environment, through how you take care of yourself, and how you think of yourself that are going to express these genes and possibly cause things like autoimmune diseases. Now, the nice thing about this is we have control over these issues, right? We have control over our environment. We have control over how we take care of our bodies, and we have control over how we take care of our lives and our minds. So this may sound scary, like, oh gosh, how am I going to prevent this kind of stuff? But the one thing we want to impart upon everybody this evening is that it's equally empowering because you have control over how your genes are expressed.
Okay. This is Dr. Allison here. Hello, everyone. Let's talk about some of the differences between conventional medicine and functional medicine or functional nutrition. Most conventional doctors today primarily focus on the chemical components of health using medication. We're not saying medication is bad. It's definitely good in acute cases, but generally speaking, when you go to your family doc, they will address any one of your problems by giving you a prescription. And by doing the medications, there are endless ways that influences the body in a negative way, because it can artificially manipulate inflammation. So increasing inflammation or decreasing inflammation in an artificial way. It can influence hormones and then many other essential biochemical processes that are naturally going on in the body. But unfortunately, the common goal is basically covering up the symptoms. So on the other hand, what we do in our office and functional nutrition, functional medicine doctors as a whole address the origin of disease and the root cause to ensure comprehensive and effective treatment. So, you know, covering up the symptoms should never really be considered a cure. So if you look at this slide, this is kind of a nice representation here: conventional medicine on one side, functional medicine or functional nutrition on the other side. And again, conventional medicine is great in acute settings, but for your chronic conditions, your autoimmune conditions, really getting to the root cause can go far more for your health than just, you know, taking a pill and saying, you know, call me later. Okay, so as Dr. Ray had said, you know, you think of your health as the triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go a little bit deeper about the environmental factors or the chemical factors that may contribute to autoimmune issues. So what are these environmental factors? So basically, environmental components of your health, there will be a large majority of the things that we discussed throughout this presentation, but for a very good reason, because These are the things that refer to anything that enters or interacts with the body. So things like food, vitamins, minerals, water, pesticides, preservatives, dyes, bacterias, parasites, toxins, allergens. All of those things are environmental components. And a good chunk of those, again, you have control over. There are some that we have less control over, like the bacteria, parasites, toxins, allergens, even other microorganisms. But just moving forward, that's what we mean by the environmental factors. And again, the common theme throughout this whole triangle of health is that you are in control. So you are in control of your environment. You choose what you put in and on your body, and in turn, the environmental influence on your gene activation. So if you can just keep that thought in your mind that, you know, your choices determine gene expression, that will go a long way with helping you understand how these autoimmune conditions can arise.
Now, as we talk about environmental influences, one of the biggest ones, obviously, is on how you influence your body through your environment is what you put into it. So we're going to touch on some of the top nutritional deficiencies that can contribute to autoimmune disease. So vitamin and mineral deficiencies and the like. So here are the most common ones that we see in practice especially. It's not limited to this, but these are the most common ones we see. And these are no doubt things that at least your family doctor hopefully is at least checking, if not more in depth from here. So things like vitamin D, your B12 vitamin, or your B vitamins in general, B12 and folate, which is B9, magnesium, and your omega-3 fatty acids, which are huge. So obviously, you can see at the bottom there, water. People don't even think about water. Hydration is huge. Let's hit the biggies. So vitamin D. Let's talk about vitamin D. It's a big one. At least everybody's getting this checked nowadays. What is it? Fat-soluble vitamin naturally present in very few foods. So it's added to others like dairy and all kinds of goofy stuff. But here's the deal. Your best source is through ultraviolet rays from the sun. Everybody knows, oh, I go out in the sun, I get vitamin D. The problem is most people are not getting enough exposure, or if they're out in the sun, they're wearing sunscreens and things so that they minimize their exposure. So vitamin D must be activated in the liver and the kidney. It is huge for calcium absorption and bone health. So everyone out there with osteoporosis is jamming the calcium, whereas vitamin D is crucial for its absorption. So you could have all the calcium in the world and not have adequate vitamin D levels, and you're not supporting bone health. Some other important roles: modulation of cell growth, which means it controls cell growth, plays a large role in the muscular system, the nervous system, and like we're talking today, immune function. A very important immune regulator, vitamin D. Here you go, right here. Nice study from this year, 2018. You can read it. Clear that vitamin D has important roles in addition to its classic effects on calcium and bone homeostasis. Read down the bottom. There is increasing evidence linking vitamin D deficiency and autoimmune diseases, including multiple sclerosis, RA, diabetes, that would be type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes is a different animal, inflammatory bowel disease, systemic lupus, yada, 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 right? So huge link between vitamin D deficiency and autoimmune disease, and everybody who walks in our office has vitamin D deficiency, okay? Because the best way to get it is through exposure to the sun. We don't get enough of that nowadays, so most of the time we just need to supplement. Where do you get it from? Here are your food sources. Again, most of us do not get enough of these. Your best sources are wild-caught fishes, so salmon, tuna, sardines, eggs, things like avocado, things like that. Sun is the best source, is the best source is the sun. Food sources aren't that great, to be honest with you. So your best source is the sun. If you're not getting good sources or not good exposure to the sun, you probably need to supplement. Now let's talk real quick about medications and deficiencies. Medications, excuse me, play a large role, especially common medications that are used to treat autoimmune diseases, because they can actually cause vitamin and mineral deficiencies, which in turn can affect your immune function. So seems kind of silly sometimes, right? Definitely counterproductive at best. So a couple of quick things we're going to touch on. Some medicines that can interfere with immune function. For example, common blood pressure medications, right? And I'm going to rattle off a bunch of medications here that either people on this webinar or are on, or you know somebody who's on these medications because they're given out like candy sometimes. Blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications, diabetes medications. You know people on these ones, common ones. And they're going to cause all kinds of vitamin deficiencies. You can see this. B vitamins, magnesium, CoQ10. You see common themes, folic acid, all these things showing up. Anti-inflammatory medications, heartburn medications, hormone replacement medications. Who's not taking these, right? These things, like I said, these things are widely prescribed. And look at all the vitamin and mineral deficiencies that these common medications can contribute to. So note, obviously, well, look, this doesn't apply to all medications, okay? But I think you get the idea here, that these are very commonly prescribed medications that can contribute to these deficiencies, and these deficiencies can contribute to autoimmune disease. Always important, obviously, to have proper testing to ensure that you're meeting your nutritional needs. Let's move on to toxins, right? So we're talking about nutritional deficiencies or dietary issues, which we're going to touch on a little bit more later. But let's talk about toxic stuff, right? Because we all get exposed to these things on a regular basis. And yes, some of them are unavoidable, but many of them are avoidable. Things like GMOs, right? Genetically modified organisms, air pollutants, heavy metals, things like that. Now, and these toxins can cause a lot of symptoms. Things like fatigue, muscle aches, joint pain. I mean, all things that we all have from day to day on some level. So we're exposed to these things on a regular basis. You can see here, there's a ton of stuff coming at us all day. And ultimately, they can contribute to autoimmune disease in general, just because of the effects that they have on your immune system. So, and if you look at really any autoimmune disease, we rattled off a bunch of them earlier, there are some very common symptoms for all of them, which are listed here: fatigue, joint pain, muscle pain, headaches. I mean, you name it, it doesn't matter the autoimmune disease. These are very common symptoms that are pervasive amongst all of them. So how do you know if you have some of these deficiencies? You have to check, right? We have to do lab tests, and we have to look at these things. And I can guarantee you that many of these tests are tests that you have not had run by your doctor, right? So there's ways to monitor if you have these things, toxic buildup, nutritional deficiencies, and things like that. So you can see a couple of them on the screen. That 25 ODH is, or OHD is vitamin D, easy one. Iron panels with ferritin, the important part there is ferritin. Okay, most doctors do not run ferritin. They run a serum iron, which is not all that helpful without looking at ferritin, which is the storage form of iron. CBC, complete blood count, right? Most docs don't look at it the way we do. Homocysteine, I can guarantee your doctor probably hasn't run this one, and we run it on everyone. It's an indirect look at inflammation, but also looks at vitamin status for all those B vitamins. Things like C-reactive protein, a very identifiable and reliable marker of inflammation, especially in the cardiovascular system. Insulin, right? A lot of docs check blood sugar or A1C, which you can see above, but they don't look at insulin. Tissue mineral analysis, hair testing, food sensitivities. I can guarantee you most of you have not had these things. Now, as most of you who have seen our webinars before, it all comes down to the gut, right? So we always got to talk about the gut because that's a big one. That's the gateway. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Allison. She's going to get at you.
Okay. I usually get to talk about the gut. It's my favorite part. Okay. So in order to properly diagnose some of these nutrient deficiencies that Dr. Ray had just talked about, we need to first rule out any issues associated with gut function, because the gut is the gateway to health. So if your gut is not functioning properly, it's unlikely that your body would be able to absorb the proper nutrients anyway. So if you're eating the right foods and even taking supplements, they may not even be effective because the gut is not able to absorb them. So some major functions of the gut are things like digestion, immune response that's responsible for absorbing the nutrients, hormone regulation, not something we typically think of when we talk about the gut, vitamin production, detoxification, and actually mood management. But of all of those, the sole purpose of the gut is to ensure that you're absorbing the good. You're absorbing the good from what you're eating or any supplements, and then excreting the bad. So it's all about the balance between that. So if that balance is disrupted, that's when some major health complications can occur, whether it's just an increase in inflammation, but that is what can kind of start that domino effect and ultimately lead to something like an autoimmune condition. And an interesting thing to note, there are 10 times the amount of bacteria in our own body than our own cells. And the majority of them are in the digestive system. So just think about, you know, the response if that is not working properly. So as you can see here, this slide here says the gut firewalls. And if you know anything about a computer, which, you know, I'm not too tech savvy, but I know a firewall is there for protection. And that is the same thing as it pertains to the gut. So our gut has these natural defenses that help it to properly do its job. So you can see here, there are several things listed. The first one there, the gastro-associated lymphoid tissue, just fancy words, we kind of abbreviate that GALT. But this is actually the gut's immune system, and in fact 70% of our entire immune system is in the gut. This is a direct communication between the gut and the brain. So, you know, we have that saying, you know, gut instinct or gut feeling, and that is totally true. There is a connection between your gut and the brain. Tight junctions, I'm going to go over these in a little bit more detail in a future slide, but these are small proteins that their job is to hold the cells together that comprise the gut lining. That helps to keep, you know, the bad out and only allow in those nutrients that are supposed to pass through. Something called mucosal IgA. It's also known as immunoglobulin A. This is one of our body's antibodies, and it's considered the first line of defense within the gut against toxins. So that is what you can see elevated if your body is trying to fight off some type of infection or something that is in the gut. You might see an elevated IgA response. Friendly bacteria. As I had noted, there are tons of good bacteria in our bodies, and then those bacteria directly communicate with the GALT tissue, warning that tissue to signal the brain of potential danger. Another gut helper is stomach acid. We absolutely need stomach acid. It's essential for digesting and absorbing your nutrients, especially protein. Unfortunately, we hear a lot where people are prescribed medications to suppress stomach acid, and that is a huge issue, especially for patients who have autoimmune symptoms or conditions. So all of these things together help to promote a healthy gut and therefore healthy immunity. Now, this slide shows all of the different things that can compromise your good gut health. So the gut is powerful, but yet it is very delicate. So it doesn't take much to throw off that balance. And you can see there starting at the top, 12 o'clock, SAD is the acronym for the Standard American Diet. So that is your typical, fatty, fried food, processed food, lots of sugar. It is sad. Literally, it is sad. But this type of diet can definitely disrupt the normal gut ecosystem. Excessive medications. Dr. Ray touched on that, and I think he'll be touching on that again. Poor digestive enzymes, toxic exposure, infections, chronic stress. So you can see the theme that is recurring so far, even through this presentation. And if you've been on any of our other webinars, you can see this common theme about these certain enemies, if you will, that can cause negative effects to the gut and therefore the entire body. Okay, so this picture, this is a really great picture that shows those tight junctions that I was telling you about. On the left side is a graphic of a healthy gut. On the right side shows what we call, quote, leaky gut. That's when you have kind of a breakdown in that protection. So you see on the left, all those little things on the bottom are your cells, and those little lines in between are the tight junctions. Those are the things that help keep the cells close together, and they only allow the small nutrients to pass through the lining and be absorbed into the bloodstream. But you see, once those junctions become compromised or start to break down, we start to see larger nutrient particles pass through. Could also be bacteria or parasites. These are all things that should not be entering into the bloodstream. And then these things are looked at the immune system as foreign invaders. And then your immune complex is activated, and then your body responds by creating inflammation, potentially food sensitivities, but autoimmune issues. So that's the key here. So your body looks at that as a foreign invader. So this picture here is just a really great summary of the differences between the healthy gut and the compromised gut. But it's important to know, or try to narrow down as best as you can, what is specifically irritating your gut. So what we're going to move into now are some of the things that are known to be irritating to the gut. So medications, again, we had talked about that, but it's crucial for you to be aware of potential risks. So things like antibiotics. Antibiotics can definitely disrupt that balance of good bacteria versus bad bacteria. So yes, they kill the bad bacteria, but they can also destroy the good bacteria, which is needed for digestion. It can also disrupt vitamin synthesis and absorption of the vitamins, and then increase the risk of yeast overgrowth, which we definitely don't want that. Common pain medications have been found to erode the mucosal lining of the stomach and small intestine, so intestinal ulcers from people taking too much ibuprofen. Acid reflux medications block stomach acid production. And again, as I had said previously, we need stomach acid to break down our nutrients. So when you block stomach acid production, it slows down digestion and absorption. So you can result in nutrition deficiencies. But also, if you're not digesting your food, it just stays in your gut there. In a sense, it's rotting. So that's one of the big issues with the acid reflux medications. And then also, we had talked about that connection between the gut and the brain. So antidepressants can have the potential to negatively affect the neurotransmitters that are in the gut. So again, medications are good, you know, at certain times, but it's the long-term use of some medications that can have unintended side effects, if you will. This is just a quick slide just to kind of highlight, you know, how sick and over-medicated we are. So according to the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, in the last 30 days, 48.5% of Americans have taken at least one prescription drug. 21.7% of Americans have taken 3 or more prescription drugs. I was actually just reading a book, and there was a quote in there from a research study. A shocking 81% of Americans take at least one medication a day, and prescription drugs are now said to kill more people than heroin and cocaine combined. So clearly, we are a country that is over sick and over medicated. Alrighty, so now moving kind of around that wheel there, another enemy to the gut is something called gluten. You know, gluten was kind of a buzzword there for a while. It was first medically proven to be a cause of autoimmunity in 1952 by Dr. Willem Dick. Since then, there has been substantial amounts of research to back up the correlation between gluten and causing autoimmune issues. And gluten allergies, sensitivities, they have definitely become increasingly more common within our population. And then recent research has even been implying that gluten can cause adverse effects in people that don't even have autoimmune conditions. So, you know, it brings up the question, you know, why is all of this happening? Why are we hearing so much more often cases of people being sensitive to gluten? And that's because, if you see here, gluten directly affects the lining of the gut because of the production of a protein called zonulin. So zonulin, sorry, this is when we get into our little bit of science-y, you know, but we like to provide the research for you guys too. Zonulin is what we call a gatekeeper protein. And so again, it's responsible for keeping those junctions of the lining tight. So in the presence of something like gluten, zonulin can actually open up those spaces. So that's one of the things that can disrupt that tight junction. And then that in turn allows for too much to pass through into the bloodstream that normally would not be there. And then again, your body reacts by secreting inflammatory chemicals as a defense mechanism, and then you have that autoimmune response. And basically your body starts attacking itself. And one of the things that can show up because of that response are food sensitivities or food allergies. And I'm going to let Dr. Ray just briefly touch upon that, and then he will go into a few other of the environmental issues that can impact your health and kind of push you more towards that side of autoimmune issue.
So allergies, right? They seem more pervasive nowadays than they ever were. We've talked about some food stuff, some common allergies that are ignored, things like food sensitivities, medication allergies, chemical allergies, mold allergies, you name it. We see all of these things all the time. Anything, here's the deal, gang, anything that aggravates your immune system or fires up your immune system can contribute to or facilitate autoimmune responses. If you have an autoimmune disease, or you have the propensity for an autoimmune disease, anything that activates your immune system can cause it to attack you. You see here on the screen too, things like heavy metals, environmental toxins. We find these all the time with our patients. Lead, mercury, fluoride, which we'll get to in a sec, aluminum. These are very common environmental toxins that we find very commonly, and they cause a host of problems, and no other doctors out there, your doctor is not testing you for these things, I guarantee it. And if they are, they're just looking at blood tests, which is not really the best way to do it. Here's a big one, right? Fluoride. What's the problem with fluoride? It's in the water. We put it in our water supply. Tap water has fluoride added to it. And we can show you a litany of research articles that are shown that fluoride can cause all kinds of problems, right? It's a toxin, number one, neurologically. It messes with all kinds of hormone function, and especially thyroid function, and can result in all kinds of issues like adrenal issues. I mean, all these symptoms you see listed here could be due to fluoride toxicity. Again, we see all these things with autoimmune disease too, which many times fluoride toxicity could be a contributing factor too. Let's wrap this up. I know we're beating the horse to death here on environmental toxicities, but it's huge. The food that we eat, exposure to toxins, our body's ability to detoxify. We need to control our chemical environment, okay? And again, nobody's paying attention to this. Your doctors aren't paying attention to this. Nobody's looking at this through proper testing, comprehensive healing strategies, support that we need to deal with our environmental toxins, eliminate them, and avoid them at all costs. Let's dive right into how we take care of ourselves physically and its role in dealing with autoimmunity.
Again, this is one of my this is like one, this is 1B of my favorite. Dealing with the gut is 1A, exercise and that's 1B. But, you know, physical self. So there's really no mystery here. And it's far more straightforward than talking about the chemical factors that can influence autoimmune issues. But the physical activity encompasses, you know, everything from integrity of our muscles and basically all your body mechanics. You know, there's a misconception that as we age, you know, our health declines and we should be slower. It's definitely not true. We need to just be moving. A lot of times it's just the priority or making exercise a priority, you know, is kind of what falls by the wayside. So a sedentary life definitely contributes to this cycle of health issues and muscle atrophy. When you have muscle atrophy or wasting of the muscles, if you will, that increases joint pressure, decreases flexibility, and then escalates pain. And then, of course, pain, you don't want to exercise if you are in pain, and then that leads to more muscle loss and further restriction. So you can see it's a vicious cycle. But really the solution is to get moving in any way that you possibly can. You know, you start out where you are, you start out slow, and then you gradually ramp up from there. But some tips for introducing exercise. You know, don't try to do what other people are doing just for the sake of doing that. So look at where you are and determine individual goals for yourself. You know, create a routine, have a buddy that creates accountability. You know, don't give up if you don't see immediate results. You want to continue. Some ideas for moving. You know, you can ride your bike instead of drive. You know, park further away in the parking lot if you're walking in somewhere. You know, now that it's still summer and hot out, you know, after you eat dinner, go out and go for a walk instead of sitting and watching TV. Dance around when you're doing housework. I know that's what I love to do when I'm vacuuming, right? take the stairs. You know, all of those things are easy ways to get moving. We have this tendency to think that get moving equals you have to work out in a gym, and that is definitely not true. Just moving your joints and being active will definitely go a long way for your health. And then that last component there was the emotional self. And this component is actually most oftentimes ignored, especially in the medical system. But this is very important when dealing with your overall health, because basically you are what you think. If you do not believe that you can get well, it's likely that, you know, that will be your reality. But on the other hand, you know, if you have a positive outlook, your ability to overcome health complications definitely increases. So stress and overall health. I mean, we experience stress every single day, and it can be caused by any number of things. I mean, you can see on your screen there just the list, but I mean, we all know, you know, what stress is, but basically it's anything that puts high demand on your body, your mind, and your spirit. And the issue is when stress becomes chronic and we do not practice stress relieving techniques. That's when our body pays the consequence. That's when inflammation starts. That's when hormones kind of go out of whack. That's when all of this can eventually kind of lead down that road to an autoimmune issue. And the gut specifically is very vulnerable to stress. Stress induces change in the gut's permeability, so it may allow, again, for more things to pass through that shouldn't. It influences the sensitivity, it influences the blood flow and the secretions within the gut. You know, there are studies that have shown that the gut's microbiome, or microbiome is the term for, you know, all the bacteria that live together in the gut, but they respond directly to stress signals. And, you know, that the gut is one of the first lines of defense and attack. And again, don't forget that gut and brain connection. So when you are stressed, it will definitely show up in the gut. So some strategies to keep stress controlled within your body, you know, eating an antioxidant-rich diet, deep breathing exercises, regular exercise, participating in social activities, be around people that you like, laugh, you know, find a hobby, spend time outdoors, anything, you know, that you can do, even if it's just 10 minutes that you can carve out for yourself. Just something to be more mindful and more present. All right, so I know that was a lot of inflammation to the brain and information. So what are some action steps to keep autoimmune disease symptoms under control? Well, first, you know, definitely proper testing done to identify your body's unique needs, whether they're a nutrient deficiency or another type of blood test that we had talked about earlier. That is one of the easiest ways just to get a good baseline as far as what's going on. But on your screen here, you can see some additional action steps that you can actually, you know, after participating in this webinar, these are things you can do now. You don't have to do the other testing, but things like intermittent fasting. There are definite food restrictions that you can do. You can do elimination diets for 2 to 4 weeks. You know, change your diet gradually to contain only easy to digest whole foods. You know, your plant-based fats, your good lean proteins, vegetables, and some fruit. Stay hydrated, especially these last couple of days, and then the next to come are going to be so hot, but staying hydrated is key. Eat enough fiber. Take a good probiotic and definitely make sure you're doing the digestive enzymes. Avoid unnecessary antibiotics. Again, that disrupts that microbiome. Detoxify regularly. We have a program that we do for our patients that, you know, we reduce inflammation, we restore gut function, and then we do a liver detox. The whole thing is about 6 weeks in length, and it's just a really great way to reboot that metabolism and heal the gut and just get your body functioning better. Practice stress management and sleep. Sleep is another huge factor in stress, gut health, overall health. If that is often overlooked, but make sure you're getting, anywhere from 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night if you can. So again, take a deep breath there. I know that was a lot, but this is what we're passionate about. This is what we like to help people with. I'll turn this over to Dr. Ray for some closing comments, but from me, thank you very much for being on this webinar. If you have any questions, you can click on the Q&A at the bottom. You can type your question in there. You can raise a hand. I think there were some hands that were raised throughout, and we did see that. So as we're kind of going through here, we'll look at the questions and we can answer those. But you can fire those out now. And then again, thank you very much. And here is Dr. Ray.
Just some final thoughts to kind of tie everything together. To circle back around to some of the things that we talked about in the beginning. Here's the deal with autoimmune disease, and Dr. Allison and I were just talking about this before we got on the webinar tonight. I saw a great quote today from a Dr. Mark Hyman, which you're probably, many of you are familiar with. He's a big wig in the functional medicine world, and the quote was that your DNA or your genetics loads the gun, and your lifestyle choices in your environment pulls the trigger. And that couldn't be more true for autoimmune disease. If I know we gave a lot of information tonight, and this will be recorded and we'll send it out to everybody so you can go back and reference some of the things that we talked about. But before we take some quick Q&A, the one point that I want everyone to take home tonight is the fact that, yes, you have to have the genetics, let's say, to get an autoimmune disease, no matter what that autoimmune disease is. But we're not beholden to our genetics. We have control over our environment. We have control over the things that we put into our body, the things that we expose our body to, how we physically use our body, right? So through exercise and things, and how we use our minds, right? So how we manage stress and things like that. And we have control over the environmental and the lifestyle factors that will turn those genes on and off. So all we ask you to do, and all we try and help our patients to do, is educate yourself, do everything you can to stack the deck in your favor by living the best lifestyle that you can and being as educated about your health as you can, so that you can help to treat, prevent, do everything you can to deal with some of these chronic health conditions that are plaguing our country. Because the traditional medical model, our medical system, is failing in this respect, because it's a pharmaceutically based model. It's a symptom-based model. It's not getting the job done. So obviously our contact information is there. If you would like our help, feel free to shoot us an email or call us. We're always here to help, even if it's just for a question that you may have, or you want to shoot us an email about something, or we are always here. We're always here to help. Please reach out to us. That's what we're here for. So we're going to go ahead and I know we have a couple of hands raised and a couple of questions raised. So we're going to go ahead. Let me pull some of those up. If you have additional questions, please fire them at us right now. So we have a couple of hands up here and a couple of questions. So please go ahead and shoot them to us if you have questions.
Mhm.
If anybody has any additional questions, please, there's a Q&A function or a chat on the bottom of your, there should be a Q&A function or a chat on the bottom of your screen. We have a couple of raised hands here. If you have a raised hand, just submit your question through the chat function or the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. That way we can read it to everybody, and then we can answer it for everybody. I'm sure if there's one that has a question, that there's at least two. So there's a couple of late straggler questions that come in. Okay, here we go. I have painful bladder syndrome. Is that considered autoimmune, and do you help with that? So what you're describing here, obviously painful bladder syndrome is a symptom, right? So we have a painful bladder. It may be due to an autoimmune disease. It's probably not an autoimmune disease in and of itself, but a lot of times we see bladder dysfunction or bladder problems, things like interstitial cystitis, which is also known as IC. We also see those kinds of conditions or symptoms along with autoimmune diseases. Yes, we can help with those things. It just depends on, it all depends on what's the cause, right? So if I have a painful bladder, or if I have incontinence, or I have some kind of bowel or bladder dysfunction, we always want to get to the root of, well, what's causing that? Is it an autoimmune disease? Is it a neurological problem? I mean, what's going on? So that in of itself is not considered an autoimmune disease. It could be a symptom of an autoimmune disease. And sure, we see plenty of patients with that. We're here if you have additional questions. I know we got plenty of people on the call. We're here for you. If we don't get any additional questions, then we will wrap it up. Going once, going twice. Well, I want to thank everyone for being on the call this evening. If you do have additional questions that come to you after the call, or that you just decided you didn't want to fire away at us, again, you have our contact information. We are here for you. Call us, email us. We actually answer our own emails, so we don't have robots that do it for us. So if you have a question, submit it on the Q&A for the next, say, 30 seconds or so on the bottom of the screen. If not, that's great. Fire us an email. I can promise you we will answer them personally, either myself or Dr. Allison. So, and if you have any, you can always contact us by phone. Either way, we hope you enjoyed this presentation. Oh, hold on. We got a late one coming in. Late one coming in. All right, good question. I like this one. And I'll probably let Dr. Allison answer this one. I'll chime in too. The question is intermittent fasting safe for someone with hypothyroidism and stage 3 kidney disease? I'll tell you one thing, that intermittent fasting is definitely safe for, well, I'll say most likely safe for someone with hypothyroidism. Stage 3 kidney disease would be a case-by-case basis. It's kind of hard to answer generally on that particular question because, again, it's going to vary by patient. So, sorry, it's for myself, it would be hard to give out general information with someone with kidney disease. That would be something we'd have to evaluate individually. I could say generally with hypothyroidism, because most of it's caused by autoimmune disease, it's not typically a problem.
Right. Yeah. So generally speaking, intermittent fasting, there's a lot of research where it's very beneficial for improving hormones that influence hunger, blood sugar, metabolism, and the like. And it also actually has been shown to decrease insulin resistance, diabetes, and things like that, and has a profound neurologic impact when you do intermittent fasting. But again, with the stage 3 kidney disease, like Dr. Ray had said, you kind of need to know a little bit more, because you wouldn't want to go through anything that would further tax the kidney, more than what it currently is. Obviously, we can talk more about that. You can call the office or send us another email as well. But generally speaking, intermittent fasting is great. But for that specific condition, we would need to know a little bit more. Okay. So I think that's all of the questions right now. And again, thank you very much. You can be on the lookout. We will do another webinar next month. So we'll get that in the queue, and then we'll get notifications out. And this one, like Dr. Ray had said, we're recording it, and then we will send this out as well. So thank you very much for spending the last hour with us this evening. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your night, and get to bed early. Get those 7 to 8 hours of sleep. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.